Hello, my name is Mr. Gore, and I'm the one who will normally be handling a lot of the things dealing with the honor code. So I wanted to take a minute just to go over the honor code with you and make sure that everyone is aware of what it contains and what the expectations are. So the honor code in its core is simply this pledge, right? I pledge to take pride in my work, model and encourage integrity, and focus on learning rather than grades. One of the things that really motivated us to come up with the honor code was we felt that a lot of students were so focused on getting the grades and passing the class that they weren't realizing that the real benefit is in learning the material, which, of course sounds cliche, but it has very practical applications. If you don't understand what's going on because you cheated your way through a level 1 class, when you get to level 2, it's going to be very difficult for you, and you're going to struggle in ways that you wouldn't otherwise. And of course, what a lot of kids don't really think about or don't notice until after the fact is that when you do cheat and you get caught, then you end up, of course, even if you hadn't done well, even if you didn't study, even if you got a poor grade on something, if you, by cheating and trying to get around the grades, when you get caught, you take the 0, which you probably would never have gotten if you had just tried. Even if you had tried very poorly, it wouldn't have been a 0. It would have been better than what you would have gotten. So we want to try and use this honor code to try and help remind students and faculty as well that the purpose is the learning. That's what's going to ultimately help you. The grades are not going to be what helps you in 10, 20 years, but rather information that you learn how to apply, learning how to think for yourself, and learning how to think in a productive and kind of higher level thinking way. So we define first a couple things on that academic code. Academic integrity is simply making the right decisions in regard to learning and committing yourself to actively and honestly participating in your learning. Again, it comes back to that pledge that this is about the learning, not about the grades. And of course, academic integrity is simply making the decisions that go along with focusing on learning. Right. Collaboration, you're going to see this whenever we get to going into some of the details of what might constitute honor code violations. But we as a committee decided to really focus not just on here's the bad stuff, here's what you shouldn't be doing, and here's the punishment for it, but for instance, you can see here we define collaboration. Collaboration, by definition, is not a violation of honor code, right? Collaboration is working with others to equally complete tasks that the teacher has specifically assigned for a group. We didn't want it to be something where we focus only on the negative, but rather we talk about, okay, well, integrity means doing the right thing, right? If the right thing is often going to be group work. If you're told to work in a group, working in a group is not wrong. We don't want that to, don't want it to come across negative. We don't want to discourage collaboration, which is working within the system according to the rules set out in order to make sure that you can learn. Because if it's group work, ideally, then that group will help you learn better than individual work would. And then, of course, academic dishonesty. Just so everyone's kind of clear on what it means, it's the intended or unintended participation in activities that misrepresent one's true academic ability. For me, whenever I think about things like the terms of academic dishonesty, I helped work on the tech rules and expectations a few years ago. I try to always put these things because they can kind of be nebulous and it's hard to connect to a real life situation. I try to think of a real life situation, right? If we're talking about dishonesty, think about it with your friends, right? If your friends deceive you, intentionally or unintentionally, you're not going to like it. You're going to be upset, right? And academic dishonesty, academic honesty is trying to treat academics, your teachers, your classmates, your own learning in ways that is respectful, ways that are going to help you become a better person, that's going to help your classmates become better, and it's intentional or unintentional. If you do something wrong, it's going to hurt people's feelings. It's going to hurt people in other ways as well, such as, if there's a curve on a test and you cheated your way through it, you just threw your entire class under the bus because everyone who tried had their grade lowered and they would have gotten a better grade if you hadn't done what you've done. So we want to make sure that, you're treating people in a respectful manner. So we're going to go through a couple of kind of definitions for honor code infractions, and what we talk about at the top of all these slides, you're going to see that pledge again. Right? I pledge to take pride in my work, model and encourage integrity, and focus on learning rather than grades. All of these are simply that we're going through today, such as cheating, plagiarism, etc., are simply examples of what might be a violation of that pledge. By definition, anything that violates that pledge, if you're doing something that you wouldn't take pride in your work, right? If you wouldn't walk up to your teacher and said, "Here's how I made my 100," then guess what? You're not taking pride in your work, right? You should be able to walk up and say, "Here's how I got my grade. I studied 15 minutes every night for the last 2 weeks because I wanted to do well in this test, and I did, and everyone's going to be happy." You can take pride in that. But if you walk up to your teacher, you're probably not going to say, "Hey, I made this 100 because I wrote all the answers that a friend gave me and I put them under my test and I just copied them down and I have no idea what any of this material means." You would not be taking pride in your work, right? You're not going to say that because you're ashamed of that work. So as we go over these examples, just keep in mind these are examples. They're not exhaustive. They're not inclusive. They're really intended to just try and help you understand what might constitute a violation of that honor code. So cheating would refer to things attempting to deceive or mislead a teacher or administrator in any manner is cheating, right? You're trying to cheat the system. The rules are X, and you're trying to do it a different way. You're trying to get around rules that are put there to try and help you learn, help you grow. Collusion, unauthorized collaboration, right, is working with others to complete individual assignments as a group. Conspiring with others, so that could be encouraging others to collude, helping them figure out ways to cheat, trying to basically make things a group work when it should be individual. Fabrication would be intentionally misrepresenting or falsifying information of any type. So it could be putting your name on someone else's paper because you know you're going to do better than they will on the test. Providing misleading information. Again, I mean, that's the term honor code. It comes down to honor, right? Are you doing something that you can be proud of, or are you doing something that you're kind of ashamed of and you're trying to hide? Facilitation of academic dishonesty. That's going to be helping someone else break the honor code, right? Encouraging them to do it, giving them tips for how to do it. And we want it to be very clear, just because you weren't the one caught with the answers to this test underneath the test doesn't mean that you didn't somehow break the honor code if you're the one who provided those answers. If you're in first period and you go and you tell or take a picture of the test and you give it to your friend in seventh period, you're no better than they are. You're doing the same thing. You're just a different part of that system. And that system's really coming down to trying to make sure that your friend doesn't learn, because that's not going to help them, right? We want you to do something that's going to help you in the long run. Even if it's harder today, it's better to have that in the long run. It will help you. And then improper use of technology. So that's going to be just using technology in inappropriate ways, right? It could be taking pictures of tests, texting answers, texting during a test to try and help work out anything that you're using technology in a way that's not consistent with the purpose of the class. It's one thing if the teacher says, I want you to get out your phones and Google this topic, and I want you to put together, based on what you're able to learn, give me your opinion on this question, or justify your reason, and you can use your phone to do some research. That's one thing, right? It's your phones are part of that process. But if they say, I want you, without any outside help, to give me your opinion or to solve this problem, then there's a reason they want you to not have outside help. They want to know what is it that you know without having to get any outside help. And then that kind of helps lay the foundation for being able to say, okay, well, here's some ways that we can help you research the areas you're weak in. Here's some things that it's not going to be useful and just in life to be able to research. You can't pull out your phone every time you have a question. I used to be a foreign language teacher, right? You can't. If you were to go to a foreign country and try to pull out your phone and have entire conversations with people using nothing but Google Translate, it is exhausting. You're going to get the wrong translation. You're going to get taken advantage of, to be perfectly honest. Right? I've been in enough foreign countries to know that there are people who look for tourists, and if you don't have a basic understanding of what's going on, then you're setting yourself up to be a victim. If you at least have a basic understanding, so you can at least kind of get by, then you can protect yourself. And then, of course, plagiarism. So plagiarism, often you think of it simply in English, but really plagiarism it's a copyright violation. It can happen anywhere. You can plagiarize in science, you can plagiarize in math, you can plagiarize anywhere that you're using information from one source without properly giving it credit, citing it, using that other source in an appropriate manner. Right? It's one thing if your teacher says, I want you to research and tell me what you learn about Europe in the 1860s. And so you research. Obviously, you don't know a whole lot about that. So you research and you say, well, this is what so-and-so said. This is what I was able to find. I was able to look up this document or this newspaper, and here's what they said from a first-person perspective. Right? Not only is it just being honest, right? You're not stealing somebody else's work. You're not stealing somebody else's idea. You're saying this is someone else's. You're letting them have the glory for what they came up with. But to be honest, most plagiarism really ends up undercutting your product because if you're able to say that this is what somebody who was in the 1860s said about that time period, that's fairly reputable, right? If somebody who's 16 years old tells me what they know about the 1860s, I'm going to be honest, I don't really care. You weren't there. You weren't even here in the 1960s. You don't know what's going on. If you can tell me what somebody who was present said by properly citing it, I will trust you because you're able to give me a very reputable and credible source. Right? It all comes back to I pledge to take pride in my work, right? Model and encourage integrity, so not just with yourself, but model it for others, encourage it in others, and then focus on the learning rather than the grades. So we're going to conclude with just a couple of examples. Again, these are not exhaustive. This is just us trying to not only help you understand what would be a violation of this, but you can see in green, we have acceptable actions. Like I said, our biggest focus was we don't want to be just negative and downers and here's what's wrong with the world. There are many ways of using what could in one situation be wrong. In another situation, it could be right. And it really kind of a lot of times comes down to what's the purpose of this activity, right? How is this working? And a lot of that also comes down to your teacher, right? If they're saying to do something individual that you could do as a group, there's a reason that they want you to do it individually. And if you were to do it as a group, they're going to think that you know more than you know. And they're going to make that test harder because they assume, oh, you've mastered this material. I can throw more material on here because you've already mastered this. Well, no, you didn't master it, right? So now you are buried under all this work that you don't understand any of it. If you had just done the right thing the first time, they would have seen you don't understand this. We're going to go back and we're going to explain it. I'm going to find some other way to explain it. I'm going to work with you. I'm going to offer you tutoring. But if you cheat your way through, then they think it's not a big deal. And they're going to move on and they're going to just throw more and more on you because they have no way of knowing, right? You told them that you understood it. They believed you. And now you're buried and now they're like, I don't know how to help you because if you understood this, 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 and this, I don't know why this little thing here is bothering you. Well, the truth is you lied about everything up to that point. That doesn't help you. It doesn't help us. We want you to be able to learn. So cheating, an infraction example would be something like copying another student's homework for a grade. Again, we're using that homework to kind of reinforce what we talked about in class. 45 minutes isn't really enough. So we can reinforce, we can talk about it, we can make sure that you get a little bit extra practice. And then, of course, we can look back at that and say, how well did you understand it? Did this make sense? Did this kind of click? And then acceptable actions would be copying notes from a student when you were absent after the teacher's instructed you to do so. Most teachers aren't going to have a problem for the notes. They just want you to have the notes so you can have that information collected. But of course, one key is after the instructor has said you can do it, ask your teacher. Whenever we were doing the committee meetings, some of the instructors, they allow open note tests, so they don't allow you to copy from someone else. They expect the student to, on their own initiative, come to the teacher, and the teacher will give them the notes. If you don't do that, then you're circumventing what they're trying to set you up so you can have an open note test. And of course, you try to circumvent that, and then that takes away an option that they're trying to make things easier for you, trying to help you out, and you're not allowing them to do that. But most teachers probably will. So just check. It won't be a big deal if you check. Right? Collusion, again, that's unauthorized group work. So if a teacher assigns an individual assignment of 5 discussion questions, and then 5 different students say, well, I'll just take one of these questions each, and we'll just all put it together, then that's an infraction because it's an individual assignment. There's a reason that they want you to do this individually. If they're having you do 5 discussion questions, that sounds to me like an exam study guide. Right? If they're going to have you do an exam study guide and this is not a group exam, then having you do the study guide as a group is not going to help you. Right? You need to have that study guide in the same format that you're going to take the test if you're going to actually be able to understand it. And then you're going to identify, okay, I really don't understand question 3. I need to work on question 3. When you get to that same topic or test question, well, then on the test, you won't have a problem because you knew to study. If you didn't happen to get 3 and you never realized that 3 is a topic that you thought you understood and you don't, then you never knew until you get to the test that you don't get this. You needed that advance warning. They tried to set you up by having you do this individually, and by circumventing that, you prevented them from helping you. Acceptable action would be a group of 5 students completing the same 5 discussion questions after the teacher has said you can do this in groups. There could be a number of reasons the teacher wants you to do it in a group, but if they say you can do it in a group, then the bottom line is that is consistent with what's going to help you learn. They may be looking to help you learn to collaborate in a productive manner with others, and obviously working in a group helps that happen. They could be thinking, okay, well, this test I'm going to allow them to do in groups, so I'm going to allow them to work as a group. But because you have teacher permission, the bottom line is you know that this is going to be the best way of handling that. Right? Felicitation of academic dishonesty would be something like if a student, friend comes to you and you rewrite an entire paragraph for their essay, and then they just copy paste it, submit it. Right? Again, the teacher's trying to understand, what do they know? What do they learn? Are they able to write effectively? And if you were to just write this paragraph for them, that doesn't help them learn how to write effectively. It tells the teacher that they know, so the teacher's not going to help them do any better because they think they can do fine. And then they're going to come to a test, they're going to come to the EOC, they're going to come to something, and all of a sudden they're not able to cheat their way through it, and they're going to do very poorly. And frankly, that F is on you because they had an opportunity to let the teacher know that I don't understand, I need help, please help me. And you kept them from doing it by just rewriting the whole paragraph. Now, if they come to you with their essay, acceptable action, and you give general feedback, you help them understand why, okay, this sentence isn't working, here's where I'm getting confused. See, you're giving revision marks, revision ideas, you're helping to explain the concept. You're not doing the work for them, you're helping them to understand. Well, you're actually acting somewhat like a teacher in that situation, right? You're teaching them that this, this subject and this verb are not agreeing. And you don't just tell them, change this word to that, but you actually say, okay, well, we have a problem here, and you let them figure it out, which is going to help it stick in their brain better. It's a higher order thinking skill if they figure it out. You're explaining to them, you're helping them learn. It's about the learning. Improper use of technology. A fraction example would be sending a text with answers from a quiz taken earlier in the day, searching the internet for answer keys or guides. Again, sometimes, they're going to be on the internet. Those answer keys, those guides, that worksheet may be on the internet. But, it's not about getting that answer into the blank. It's about the teacher understanding, can you find this answer? Do you understand this material? Just because it's on Google doesn't mean that if you can write it down, you understood it. You didn't. The teacher needs to know that. Otherwise, they won't know to help you. We're trying, it's about trying to make sure that you understand these checks for learning. And if you lie on those checks for learning by infractions of the honor code, then you're making sure your teacher cannot help you. Acceptable answers or acceptable actions would be stuff like sending a text to your friends that the quiz was hard, encouraging them to study. If the teacher told you that a topic is going to be on the test, and you tell your friend this topic is going to be on the test, then you're telling them what the teacher said. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. If you're encouraging them to study, you're encouraging their learning because you're saying that, okay, I need you to know that this topic, it's difficult, and I want you to really take it seriously from me as a student who's taking this, not just from the teacher who's trying to, whoever. You've kind of basically lent credibility to what the teacher's saying. They said to study, you're saying, yeah, you really need to study because this is difficult. Right? But you're not giving them the answers so they get around the process of learning or having that learning tested. You're just encouraging them to do the right thing, which is to study. Plagiarism, right? Copying part of your paper directly from an essay on the internet. Right? The acceptable action is using a direct quote from that essay. It could be the same words, and properly citing that source. All you got to do is put it in quotation marks and cite the source in the proper manner, because plagiarism really comes down to stealing somebody else's work, right? Saying that you said something that someone else made up. Well, no, they get credit for that. They worked hard on that idea. So you should be honest, right? If you had a really good idea, I mean, I'm sure this has all happened in class. A teacher asks a question, you answer the question. You probably should have raised your hand, but you just shout out the answer. The teacher doesn't hear you. Some other people are talking at the same time, answering the question or whatever. And then the guy next to you raises his hand, says exactly what you said, and the teacher starts praising him for being a genius. You get mad. I've seen a lot of kids get mad. It's like they had the idea. It's their idea, right? You want to be a good friend and say, oh, well, Jim was just saying that, and then present Jim's idea because no one heard Jim, and it was a good idea. That's respectful to Jim. It's honoring to Jim, and Jim's going to feel good about it. If you just steal his idea, he's not going to be happy. Same with plagiarism, right? If you just steal the idea, that author's rights have been violated. They worked hard on that. If you give them credit, then you're being a good person and you're being honoring to them. So it all comes back to, I pledge to take pride in my work, model and encourage integrity, and focus on the learning rather than the grades, because it is about the learning.